Hello and welcome to this morning's webinar. My name is Susie Duncan and I'm the Head of Marketing at Daydot. Today we're going to be talking about digital optimization programs. So just before we go into that with my colleagues in the presentations, I just wanted to introduce Daydot to those of you who haven't attended one of our webinars before. So we are a digital experience optimization agency. We look at the complete digital customer journey. So our goal is to discover opportunities, to seek and understand your customers, and to create digital experiences that unleash growth. We do this through three core service areas. So research services, we really try and discover the opportunities and understand your customers through behavior research, usability testing. We go on to consultancy, so ideation and prioritization, building out experimentation roadmaps, and then we actually do the experiments. So we design, run the development, and just kind of creating those tests and the reporting off the back of it to kind of close that loop and work with our clients very, very closely. We build packages out depending on what our clients need, but our ultimate goal is to continuously experiment across the customer journey to drive recurring revenue and lifetime value. Just to bring that to life, there's a quick diagram there. So we're not interested in this quick acquisition transactional relationship. We're really moving along the curve, and that's what we mean by recurring revenue, looking at engaged customer relationships and building loyalty. So this morning, my colleague Alex and Katie will be talking through the different stages of the optimization program, maturity scale, and they'll be giving you advice about how you can move up that scale and move your business forward. So they'll be talking in a moment. They're part of the Daydot optimization team. And then we also have a guest speaker, Lois Crawford, who is a digital product owner at BT. So after the guys have presented, then I'll be hosting a Q&A with Lois at the end of the webinar. A couple of housekeeping things. Questions are welcome. So you know by now the Q&A function on Zoom, I'll be checking that throughout and at the end. We'll try and answer as many questions at the end. The session is being recorded and will be available on our website. So look out for that. And also keep an eye on your email. We'll be sending out later today a survey just to get your feedback on what you thought about the webinar so that we can improve and make sure that these sessions are as valuable as possible. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alex. Give him a minute to share his screen. There we go.
Great, thanks, Susie.
No worries.
Okay, so I'm going to kick off by just introducing the optimization maturity curve and what the components are within that curve. So I think we should start by just identifying or defining what we mean by optimization. So traditionally, when we talk about optimization, we talk about conversion rate optimization, which you've probably all heard of. And that's essentially A/B testing to increase the number of users who take a specific action on a website. So that could be signing up to a newsletter, it could be orders, transactions, any of those conversions on a site. But when a program starts to get more mature, we start to get into digital experience optimization. And this is when we start to look at the process of optimizing the entire journey, the digital journey from acquisitions, retention, brand loyalty, all the way through to maximizing customer lifetime value. So getting those users to be repeat visitors, repeat transactions, and looking at the whole customer lifetime. And this will take into account not just the digital journey, but also to be fully effective, we'll need to look at offline touch points as well. So when we think about an optimization program, what is a mature optimization program and why do we want to get there? So a mature optimization program is when DXO is really embedded into all the thinking that is applied to the processes that impact your customers. So it'll be an organization that routinely looks at strategy, design, implementation, and managing the customer experience in a disciplined way. So a lot of it is there's processes to the whole thing, and the testing will inform your entire business strategy. And the reason for putting the effort in and getting to a mature optimization program, there are lots of reasons for it, but some core benefits would be to help validate and interrogate your business decisions and your business direction. Can be a really good way to help validate strategy and the direction you want to go. And then we know that acquisition is really expensive. So by having a DXO program that looks at the whole journey, it can be a really effective way to help grow sustainably rather than just keep pumping money into the acquisition, that transactional acquisition at the beginning of the funnel. And then one of the other core benefits is to deliver an experience that's customer centric. So one that your customers actually maybe even enjoy and don't get frustrated about being on your site and going through your experience. And it will also help you make your brand stand out. So this is what we have as the data optimization maturity curve. So there's 4 stages to it, and I'll talk you through each stage in more detail. But essentially we have the advocate stage as stage 1. So this is where you've essentially got one person who likes the idea of testing and wants to really get it off the ground. Then you've got stage 2, which is assembly, which is where that person is starting to put more formal processes in for testing within your organization. Stage 3 is collaboration. So this is where you've now got perhaps a small optimization team and they're starting to collaborate with other teams around the business to help them achieve their departmental organizations. And then you've got the cruise stage. So this is really where it's the final stage, and it's where optimization is embedded within the whole company. It's really the testing cadence is high, and it helps inform most of the strategic decisions from the top all the way down. So I'm going to take you through each of these stages in more detail now. So the first one is advocate. So this is where, as I said, you've got one person who maybe likes the idea of testing. They might even start testing as a bolt-on to their existing job that they already have. So it's really driven by one individual, and they'll be working to set out potential quick wins and try and prove the value of optimization programs, either their manager or a departmental manager, essentially. Testing at this stage isn't necessarily or really ever informed by customer insights. It's normally just perhaps done on a hunch on what you think might work on a website. And then you start to get more formal with it. So you get into the stage 2, which is assembly. So by this point, the initial advocate would have gained momentum, and there'll be some organizational buy-in. So maybe they've done a few tests and they've got some wins, and there's definitely some interest there of testing and what it can maybe potentially deliver. So what they'll be looking to do here is put in best practice processes. So things like prioritization, processes on how to ideate, do research, that sort of thing. Get those processes that we use every day in a mature optimization program, start to get them in place. And at this point, you might start to get some more customer insights from a low level. So using things like pop-up surveys, that sort of thing, where you can start to get a gold mine of data about what your customers are thinking and inform your testing based off that. So the third stage is collaboration. So this is now, your optimization program is starting to expand, and you'll be reaching out, working with other teams. So this might be within the marketing team, it could be the acquisition team, or it could be the retention team or the engagement team. And you're starting to work with them to understand what their objectives are and how testing can help in that. And those people in those teams might be a bit brought into testing now because they've seen some of the earlier work that would have been done in the assembly and advocate stage, and they understand that testing can help them achieve their own objectives and KPIs. And in order to do that, the research behind all of these tests will now be running at a greater speed. So you can get research now might be, you might start to have a specific research person in the company, and they'll start to look at user interviews, surveys, that sort of thing. So it gets a lot more detailed in the research that informs your testing. And as a result, your testing strategies become much more robust. And then the final stage is the cruise stage. So this is where optimization is really at the heart of the business. Testing cadence is high, and it informs all strategy decisions. So everyone, before making any decisions, looks to test things before actually implementing anything on site. You'll probably have a team here which is a full optimization team, which can consist of developers, optimization strategists, designers, researchers, and it's really in full flow at high cadence. So there are 4 stages, but it's worth thinking, okay, so we've got these 4 stages, but how do we actually move along those stages? How can I get myself from advocate stage all the way to collaboration or even cruise? So we think there are 4 pillars to this, really. So that's team, tools, governance, and culture. And there's a lot that goes into these 4 pillars, but I'm just going to walk you through now and give you an idea of what it looks like for each pillar at each stage. So team. So this is really, I've spoken a little bit about this already, but this is just the personnel and the team you've got running optimization. So as I mentioned before, in Advocate, you've got no full-time formal DXO position. They won't have any training specifically, and marketing within your company remains, the focus in it remains really on paid media acquisition rather than anything else. If the Advocate does try and make any changes, this will require support from either the IT team or the development team. So reaching out to those teams. By the time it gets to the assembly stage, you will have a formal DXO position. They do tend to sit in marketing at the beginning of a maturity curve. And perhaps at this point, you might be using a free optimization tool that would allow you to make small website changes without any input from the dev department or IT team. Once you're into the collaboration stage, you have now got a formal DXO team, and you've probably got a manager and some strategy associates. Other specialities may exist, so perhaps by this point you've started to get your own developer or even designer, and hopefully you've definitely got some research and a researcher by this point. And the making up of the optimization team is one thing, but also working with other teams around the business, as I mentioned earlier, is crucial by this point. So working with your acquisition team, your engagement teams. And if you definitely have your own developer, website changes can maybe be made within the DXO team rather than having to go to another team to get these changes actually implemented and made. And then on the cruise, once we're on the cruise stage, we have a standalone DXO team, and you will have strategists, designers, developers, researchers. So it's a proper full-fledged team. DXO and testing is really at the center of the company, and all changes are made within that team. So then we have our next pillar, which is tools. So this is around the actual tools you're using to run optimization programs. So at the beginning, Advocate, you've got a lot of site changes are made in the CMS rather than any testing tool. There's probably already an existing quantitative tool like Google Analytics or Adobe that exists on the website, but there probably isn't any qualitative tools used. So tools to get customer insight data. And there is an absence of any A/B testing tools. But once we get into assembly and the Advocate has started to lay the groundwork for those processes, you're probably on a free A/B testing tool, and you've got now some quantitative analytics set up with a focus on conversion goals rather than just sort of a generic analytics account. And looking to get some basic research user tools on the website by now, so that could be survey tools such as Crawley, that sort of thing. By the collaboration stage, you're probably paying now for an A/B testing tool. There's a huge amount out there, but you would have found one that works for your company and perhaps are paying for it. There's an adoption of quantitative and qualitative tools routinely used to inform testing strategy. With any testing strategy, the research and the insights that go into it make it robust and really, to be honest, are the strategy themselves. And you'll be running a high testing cadence by this point, so specific project management tool would be useful. There's a number out there that can be used, but this is something just to keep track of all the experiments and have an overview for the team of what's going on, not only for your team, but also wider teams around the business, so they know what's happening with any tests they're involved in. And then the final stage is cruise. So at this stage, you've probably got the enterprise level A/B testing tool, or maybe even a custom-made tool, which some of the larger companies do have. All data, really testing data, is integrated into other insight and analytics tools. And you'll be gathering data from multiple different sources and trying to combine that data to get a more rounded customer picture. So the third in our 4th pillar is governance. So this goes really around to the processes of an optimization maturity curve and how we can make sure that the whole thing is robust. So in the Advocate stage, you haven't really got any processes. So it's down to the Advocate to start to think about those processes. Experiments are not data-driven and they're very ad hoc. and all of the goals in the experiments there are short term. By assembly, those processes are starting to get in place, you've documented them, and they're adopted internally within a team. Your testing now might get a bit more strategic, but it really is based on one current test rather than anything beyond that. And once you're into the collaboration stage, then it starts to get a bit more formal, a bit more robust. So you've got testing processes that feed into business strategy, and there's planning for short and long-term goals. So your experimentation might now at this point be determined by an organization's quarterly or annual goals. So you might have ideation sessions, that sort of thing, that will focus on the next 3 months and the goals of teams, then their sort of 3-month roadmap and what that might look like, and how testing can help achieve their KPIs. And then by the governance stage, experimentation is really at the core of answering all business questions. And it is occurring at all levels of the business, and the strategy flows down from top to bottom. And all the KPIs in experimentation are focused on improving customer lifetime value. And the final of the pillars is culture. So this pillar is about getting testing to be adopted within the company and to be at the heart of what's going on, really. So again, advocate, you can understand this is kind of a one-man band, one person tasked with sort of initiating the whole thing. Senior leadership at this point have an idea of customer experience and think it's important, but perhaps probably don't really understand the link between customer experience and revenue, as opposed to acquisition and revenue. So you move into assembly, and while DXO is now driven by one team or department, senior leadership start to specifically hire for DXO. There's been some early tests, and they understand that there is potential here. So the culture within that department, the senior leadership within that department is growing, and there's an adoption of testing. By the time you get into the collaboration stage, senior leadership understand the link between customer experience and business results. So the optimization team are developing roadmaps in order to help achieve those objectives. And once you're into the final stage, the C-suite stage, the cruise stage, sorry, you've got C-suite who are really bought into the whole idea of testing, and they aim to maintain and promote customer-centric testing culture, with all business decisions coming from testing. It really is an essential part of the strategy by this point. So the cruise stage is very mature, and there are a few companies who are in that stage. But that's really where we want to get to. So that's kind of a quick overview of those pillars. There is obviously a lot that goes into them, but it just gives you a flavour. I think now what would be good is just to do a quick poll to get an understanding of where you think your organisation is at the maturity curve. So advocate, you're just getting started, or assembly, you've got started, you've got some tests under your belt, and you're starting to think about how you can grow your optimization team. Or collaboration, which is probably the most common, where you've got a team and you're doing some testing with people around the business. Or then cruise, where you're fully mature and experimentation is everything within your business. Or maybe you're not even on the curve yet, and you're kind of starting to think about how you can get going. Okay, so we've got some results here. So that's not surprising. Most people are at the collaboration stage, which is what I thought. And we've got a few at the cruise stage, which is good. Advocate and assembly. Okay, well, that's really good to know. So what I'm going to do now then, which will be useful for those of you in the sort of advocate, assembly, collaboration stage, is hand over to Katie, who's going to talk you through how you can move along this curve.
Thank you, Alex. I'm just going to steal the screen from you. Great. So hopefully you can all see my screen well. Yeah, so as Alex mentioned, I'm going to spend 15-20 minutes now just walking you through how you can really sort of move up the curve. So in terms of what Alex covered, he mentioned around there's the four key elements to optimization maturity. So team, tools, governance, and culture. Now, of course, these are all really important. You need to have them all working together nicely. But culture really is the biggest blocker to being able to do optimization firstly, and then also growing it in the business. And it's a tricky one, because if you're not starting to create that culture, and if you're not having kind of the senior stakeholders and supporting teams really sort of buying into optimization, then you're going to struggle to get the investment that you then need to move up the maturity curve. And something that's often not talked about is the operating model. So how are you actually running your optimization program? What people do you have in-house versus outsourced? So this is really important to consider as well, because it can really give a ceiling to your success. So in this presentation, I'm going to focus on those three: so culture, investment, and operating model, and give you some sort of food for thought and some actions that hopefully you can take back to your business and really grow your own optimization program. So starting with culture. So culture, there is so much to culture. I'm sure if you Googled it, there's white papers, research studies all over the place. But to condense it down, sort of the four sort of fundamentals that you really need to have in place is education. So education of not just your core team who are doing optimization, but education of everyone around the business, getting to people to really understand the value. And then ultimately, as you move along the maturity curve, they will be getting more involved in the delivery of optimization as well. You then need to look at your communicate. So how are you communicating to the business around what you're doing? What level of transparency do you have within the business on your optimization activities? And then third one, motivate. So you need to make sure you're really motivating people to be involved within optimization. And start with this is, motivating them to be pitching in with ideas, then also motivating them to also become champions around the business for doing optimization. And then finally is the governance and tools. So Alex did touch on this, but it's really fundamental that in the centre you have the right governance and tools in place, because again, if you don't, a lot of this will fall down. So starting with educate. So it's important to think about this from 2 points of view. There's obviously your core team, where you'll be doing more of the formal training, the learn by doing, and the collaboration with each other. So, designer and user research really working well together. But as I mentioned, it's not just about them being experts in doing their job. It's also being experts in optimization, experimentation, building out a culture, so that you're not the only advocate. You're growing all these advocates within the business. You're all talking the same language, talking about the same benefits. And then the wider team as well. So while they don't need to know the details of how do I run a test at the beginning of that maturity curve, you need to start sort of nurturing their knowledge around optimization. So firstly, they're starting to get buy-in, people are starting to understand the value of it. And then ultimately, as you move along that curve, you've nurtured them to the point where actually they're really ready to be getting involved. And this can be achieved through lunch and learns and workshops, which work well, sort of more informal. And something we do with one of our biggest clients who we've gone sort of along that journey for the last 4 years is we've been doing summits. So 3-4 times a year, we go on site for 2 weeks. And those 2 weeks would be called the Optimisation Summit. And you'd bring in lots of different stakeholders. There'd be workshops, presentations of previous work and upcoming sort of roadmap. It's a really good way to have that 2 week just really focus and get people excited. And then something you can just do on a daily basis is sharing articles. So sharing of articles of what competitors are doing, or what some of the bigger brands who are doing optimization, how they're benefiting from it. It's a really good way of keep sort of adding those little touch points as you go through the weeks and months as well. And then communicate. So it's really important that you don't work in this echo chamber. And it's something that, if you think about other parts of the business, everyone is in their own team, their own department, and they'll bring people in every now and again, who they're working with. But optimization needs to be different. You need to be really communicating what you're doing, the results you're driving within the entire business. So to do that, you need to be doing this in a structured way. Otherwise, it will just fall down. So firstly, developing out that communication plan. So thinking about, okay, what's the information that I want to be communicating up to the business? Who needs to hear that? How am I going to send it? What channel will I use? Will it be a newsletter? Will it be a Slack message, an email? And then at what time are you sending that? Are you sending a newsletter once a month, every 2 weeks? So really thinking about that communication plan. And then experiment with the different channels as well. You'll find that you might get more engagement in one versus the other. So experiment and see what works best for you and your business. And it's important that with that communication, you're not just sharing the wins. Obviously, everyone loves to hear about the wins and the great results, but it's important you share the losses as well, because it's such an important part of optimization. And especially from a cultural point of view, it's important that you have this message from the very beginning. And the way you frame it, it doesn't need to be, oh, we had a red test, that's a shame. Think about how you can frame it in terms of, well, what did you learn? You still learn. What revenue did you then actually save the business from losing had they just gone and implemented the variation? So thinking about how you are phrasing and communicating your messages, and then try and make it sort of a two-way communication as well. What can happen is you send an email or a Slack and you get no engagement. Look to try and gamify it. On Slack, for example, you can do polls. You say, right, everyone vote, which variation do you think is going to win? Using the emojis, all sorts of stuff. So really try and gamify it in a way that you can. And then moving into motivate. So this is a really important one. And I think when you have experts within the business who are really focused on optimization and experimentation, and that is their core job, it can be a little bit intimidating for other people when you're trying to get them involved, but they know they're not an expert. So firstly, it's really important to empower people, really make them feel like they're part of this, really empower them to get involved and make it really easy for them as well. If you think about, you're asking, like, we really want all your ideas around the business, make it easy. Don't make it a spreadsheet that they have to go in and have to start prioritizing it themselves, because at the beginning, that's just too much. Make it a really simple form, name, email, idea. And then there's a big coaching opportunity here as well. So again, when you're at that earlier stage, some of the ideas that the business might submit, they might rank quite low in prioritization. It's not uncommon. It could be that the test idea they have is on a really low trafficked page. Now, rather than it just getting rejected or them just never hearing about it again, feed that back to them, feedback why it didn't get prioritized, and that will help them educate themselves as well. And make sure you're sharing. There's nothing worse than submitting an idea or working really hard on an idea, so you're a designer, and then you never hear what happens with it. It's really demotivating. So it's important you share the results and impact with those people. But also when you're working on those bigger projects, those bigger optimization tests, make sure you're sharing and shouting loud and proud about what you've achieved. And then finally, with the language that you're using throughout, make sure you're tying everything you're saying back to that stakeholder's priorities. Speak the same language as them, and they're going to be much more motivated. And then finally is the governance and tools. So this, as I said, is really central to kind of those building blocks that I just talked about. So firstly, just make sure that there's full clarity in what everyone's roles and responsibilities are. So you can see a matrix on the right-hand side here, which is just an example to help you really map out, and it gives everyone visibility within the organization as well. As you become more mature, this is so important as well, especially when you start to maybe work in a more sort of center of excellence model. You need to make sure as well that regardless of what stage you're at with in the maturity curve, that you have centralized processes. Now it's processes for generating ideas, for prioritizing them, for delivering them, for analyzing and iterating. Keep those processes central. Otherwise, that kind of best practice that you've built in will just get lost. And make sure you have a central repository of past tests as well. Twofold. One is it gives people access to learnings and insights so they can then apply across the business, but it also stops people running the same test that maybe someone else has, really reduces down the chance for duplication. And make sure your technology stack is centralized as well. Some businesses might have one tool over here, another tool over here, different research tools. Get everyone using the same tools, because not only does it provide, it gets like really good visibility of what everyone is doing, what tests are running. People can go and also learn from what other people are doing as well. So it's really important to think about centralizing all of this. So at this point, you will be starting to build up that culture, and you'll be at various stages with that. And to really sort of push yourself forward up the curve, you need to gain investment. So investment is in two ways. There's the financial investment that you need, but then there's also the stakeholder investment you need, which without that, you're going to still struggle to grow the culture within the business. And that is really the formula for growing your optimization program. So in terms of how you can get the investment that you need, the first stage is to audit your program. So there's a few ways that you can do this. So the first one being case studies. So look online, see what you can find in terms of optimization, see what like other businesses, and they could be your competitors or businesses who we aspire to be like. What are they doing? What case studies do they have of how running optimization experiments has, how has it impacted their business? It's a really good use case that you can present to your stakeholders. Then looking to do a competitor audit. So you can use a tool like BuiltWith, where you can see what sort of optimization technology your competitors are using. And it gives you a good indication of like how much they're investing within experimentation. So if we think about Optimizely, if they have Optimizely on their site, it's likely that they're investing quite a bit of money within the business to be doing optimization. And then the final, most robust, is to do a third-party audit. So this is where a team of optimization experts would come in, review your current program, so your team, tools, governance and culture, as Alex talked about, and they will really outline where the gaps are within your current program and where you need to invest. So that gives you a more robust sort of audit and report of where you need to invest. You then need to start mapping out the opportunity. So starting with discovery. So here you want to start with data and research. So you want to be going into your data and research, finding those opportunities of where you should be investing more time in doing optimization. Now, this could be that there's way more opportunity within, say, acquisition, where you're focusing now, but you should also be thinking holistically about the customer journey. Where is there sort of low engagement, where there should be much higher engagement? Then take what you found and start to ideate, start to build out your roadmap. And this roadmap should be prioritized. And at this point, you need to start adding in how much traffic would be going to this test, and what do you think would be the estimated uplift on the KPI? Now, with that kind of roadmap and that data you've added, you can then start to forecast and model out the revenue that you would expect to drive. So at this point, you're really going to start connecting with your stakeholders. They're really going to start to see the value in what you're talking about here. And then bringing this together, so the audit will have told you, okay, what are the gaps in our program currently for what we're doing? But then also for the opportunities I've identified, what do I need to actually deliver on this roadmap? Am I going to need to bring more people in? Is there additional tech that I'm going to need to bring in? From a governance point of view, do we need to be spending a lot of time focusing on that and bringing in a project manager? So here you start to build out your investment request. What do I need to invest in, and how much do I need to invest? And then bringing all of this information together, you're then ready to start building out your business case. Now, we work hand in hand with our clients on this. The first step we go through is we calculate the ROI. So we know the revenue forecast from the roadmap, we know what our investment ask is, and from that we can calculate the ROI of the investment. We then use previous test results. So if you're kind of at the advocate stage, it might be you don't have any test results, in which case doing a proof of concept test, just investing a small amount of money to be able to do that one test that just gives you that proof point is really valuable. Or if you're already running testing, you'll have results that you can pull from. So that helps to prove the concept. And then also add in the findings from the audit, because that then proves the gaps that have been identified. These are real tangible gaps. Then also think about, there's obviously the direct revenue that the optimization roadmaps will drive, but what's the other sort of impact that the optimization tests and insights can have on the business? Think about the audience understanding you're going to develop through running more research, through running more tests. How can that be used in the business? How can it be used to optimize your messaging offsite, your productization, your pricing? There's so much impact it can have elsewhere. Really make sure you cover that as well. You need to make sure you do optimization justice there. And again, going back to language, make sure you speak in the same language, especially within our space. There's a lot of acronyms, a lot of terminology, and it's very easy to just run away with that. I know I do all the time. So really make sure you're speaking the same language as the people who are going to be looking at this business case. And then finally, the operating model. So there's two parts to this. First one is the team structure. So within the optimization space, these are the three main structures that we see. So there's decentralized. So this is the model where optimization is spread all the way throughout the business. You've got marketing running tests, you've got product running tests, brand running tests. You've then got centralized. So this is where you have one central team who are running all of the tests and will partner with, say, the product team to run their ideas and work with them closely, but it's that central team is managing the whole process. And then you've got the center of excellence. This is where you've got more of a hybrid. So you've still got that central team who are very much focused on making sure there's the right processes, the right education and learning, the right technology in place. And they are almost like providing stewardship. The other departments are then actually running the tests themselves. So depending on the size of your business, the type of budget, the KPIs that you're working towards, the model that's right for you will differ. I'd say that decentralized we would never really recommend, because there is always so much room for working, or you're working in silos. You're working in silos, which means there's so much more room for people running the same tests and learning's not being shared and tests running on top of each other. There's the kind of number of disadvantages is way higher than the advantages here. So we wouldn't really recommend decentralized. Centralized is really the best place to start, with you then moving towards the center of excellence as you become more mature within optimization. And then the other element you have to consider as well is the in-house versus outsource. Now, there's an argument for both. Outsourcing is great for when you're kind of at that earlier stages and you're not ready to invest in hiring, 5 different people and making that investment up front. In-house is great when you're sort of more further along the maturity and you've got everyone is embedded in-house working together. And then you've got hybrid as well, which is a really good sort of, as you're moving along that journey, to move towards hybrid. So where you've got, maybe in-house, you're doing a lot of the leading the roadmap, but then you're working with a partner who can provide, for example, additional strategy or design and build, plugging some of the gaps that you found through that audit. So bringing that all together then, so looking at the maturity curve again, typically the recommendation is when you're at that advocate stage, what works best for you will be to outsource. So bringing that partner in who not only can bring in the right tools, can bring in the right team for you, but they also have the experience in building that culture of optimization. It's not a one-man job building culture, and it's definitely not something that can be done overnight. So having people come in who have been through this before will really help you. And again, keeping that centralized structure. Then as you move towards assembly and collaboration, it's at this point you'll start to move towards a hybrid model. So you will have started to see, the business will have started to see the impact that optimization can have. They're willing to invest a bit more money in optimization. You can start hiring maybe an optimization manager who can then start, their day-to-day is to focus on optimization, but you're still working with that sort of partner to be able to help with some strategy, help with the design and build as you start to continue to grow. And then as you move to collaboration and crews, it's at that point that you'll start to move maybe more into an in-house model. You've had sort of all the knowledge transfer, you've learned everything there is to know from the sort of partner experts. And it's this point is where you can begin to build out that center of excellence. So you've been through that education and motivation journey. The teams are really ready to be running their own tests. They know what they're doing. They're really motivated to do it. All the processes are set up. So you're ready to move to that center of excellence model. So I hope that was helpful for you all, and you've now got a bit of an understanding of sort of the things you can do now to help drive in the culture, getting more investment to do optimization, and just making sure you've got the right operating model in place for you now, and also sort of thinking about the future. So I'm going to hand back over to Susie now.
Thanks, Katie and Alex. That was really two great presentations there and so much content. So just to reassure everybody, that has been recorded and we will send it round, and you'll be able to kind of review it, pause any bits that particularly jumped out at you. So we will carry on for now and introduce Lois. So hi Lois, thank you so much for joining us. I just thought maybe just introduce yourself to begin with and just explain a bit about your role. That would be great.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Lois. I'm a product owner within BT, focusing on BTTV acquisition. And within the product owner role, I focus on merchandising offers and the trading activities, as well as optimization and platform migration. So a bit of a jack of all trades within the product owner role that I do.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
There's a lot.
Lot in there. Do you want to give us a bit of an idea of sort of your optimization program approach at BT? Obviously, that side of your role that we're interested in today.
Yeah, of course. So Alex talked about the optimization maturity curve. I definitely see us at the collaboration stage. We've got complete buy-in from our head ofs and are empowered to have that test and learn mentality. And we've got tools there to support us as well. We've got like a Toby target, and we've got user research teams there constantly to provide that qualitative data side as well. But kind of the only kind of bit around that, but we're not quite nailing, is that departments and consumer are still very siloed. So we sit in digital as ourselves and we have our kind of OKRs in place. But we don't have them aligned across departments. So there's not kind of that combined end goal for us in, say, marketing. So we have different kind of priorities, and we're ultimately still seen as almost a delivery function where that trading roadmap takes priority. But I kind of see that next stage is that we really have to have that aligned focus between us and all the departments, and we're looking at how we can change that mindset between us as well.
So the different departments are based on different products that BT have, is that right?
Yeah, so we're kind of set up in the way that we're digital as a department, but we also have marketing and commercial. And then marketing obviously have your propositions, your base comms, and your kind of dem gen teams as well. So kind of all within us, we have different priorities based on products.
Yeah, so there's not a single person or single team that owns optimization right now.
No.
So it's sort of a hybrid then from what Katie was saying.
Yeah,
has that just been as we've seen sort of the importance of optimization build up, that's just how it's evolved, or do you think that's sort of a conscious decision of getting from A to B to C that
I think it's how it's evolved really. So in digital, we've definitely focused on, right, what is our digital transformation? Let's work agile. Whereas the rest of the business, because we're such a large business, is a bit behind in that. So we're seeing some areas adopt agile mentality, where others are still working waterfall, but we still don't have that complete joined up end-to-end customer experience where we can really focus the optimization on. It's still done in kind of silos. So I look after basically customers coming onto the website, optimizing from there, but I don't really get a say on, right, when do customers see our advertising and how do we get them online, for example. We don't have that joined up view.
Linking all the elements of the customer journey. So you're kind of optimizing in certain areas that you can. It's challenging to kind of get that whole piece, what we call the digital experience across the entire journey. I mean, there aren't many brands that are doing it like that. They're kind of at an interim stage like you are, but you definitely, it's good that you think you're at the collaboration stage where you're just starting to kind of build the knowledge. And do you do things like Katie said to kind of build that culture, like education and like she mentioned?
Yeah, definitely.
Things. Do you do things?
Yeah, definitely. It's actually, funnily enough, I started within digital about 3 years ago, and the amount of change I've seen since I started to now. So we went from waterfall to agile, set up our squads, tribes, alliances, etc. And a lot of kind of that empowering for us as product owners has come through that education stage. So we've had loads of formal training, kind of agile training. We have lunch and learns. We have summits, as talked about. We also have other things such as book clubs. So we have book clubs once a month where we take a product book, and then we go and we discuss it as product owners. We have Ask the Expert sessions, so we have people come in from like head office of Skyscanner, Deliveroo, ASOS will come in and they'll give their perspective on how product is within their company. And definitely around that communication stage aspect as well, and creating that culture. Our MD is really hot on that, so he's always asked, he does weekly video updates, he does like polls on Slack to see how everyone is, what everyone's thinking, and definitely again around motivation, there's definitely a share and learn culture, with coaching programs where there's mentoring and reverse mentoring to really empower us as product owners and kind of close any skill gaps that we might see that's there.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah. So I know you mentioned to me previously, like how you kind of launched BTTV, or as it was then called, a couple of years ago, and how there was a shift. So you were doing optimization testing, and then there was this kind of shift which pushed you on. I don't know if you want to just explain a bit about that. That was really
of course. So around a year and a half ago, we relaunched BTTV with Now. So when we launched it, it was kind of given to us as like, okay, here's the prop, just deliver it. And there wasn't really a thought of like, okay, how does that work for digital and how does that work for our customers that transact online? And we had really, really punchy targets with that. And when we launched it, it was during the pandemic, so it just wasn't performing. We didn't get to go above the line with our Dem Gen campaigns. And around 6 months down the line, we had loads and loads of data. So we used data sources such as Medallia to get customer verbatim. We had our Adobe dashboards with all our funnels. We had call center and retail feedback, heat maps, user testing verbatim, all there. And we basically did a massive audit, and we're like, what are the key problem statements that we're seeing for BTTV as a product online? And basically, we used a tool that we have internally called a BML canvas, which stands for Build, Measure, Learn, which I'm sure you've all heard before. And basically that looked at, okay, what are the kind of key user goals, what's the business goals, what are kind of the constraints that we see in them, and then that would help us identify some hypotheses to test. And then from here, we kind of set up a kind of optimization roadmap. And we did loads of testing, but we found it kind of wasn't really moving the dial enough. And we had quite a few constraints within that because we're partnering with Now, who is our kind of key main competitor of BT, as we know, because Sky own Now. So there's loads of stuff within the contracts that we couldn't do. And we're like, okay, we're not moving the dial enough. How do we then get something punchier out there? So we kind of took a step back, looked at all our test results, and we set out a punchier vision and strategy from the problem statements that we've seen, and we started trialing bolder optimizations. And to get to kind of what those optimizations looked like, we ran stuff like activities such as design sprints to get there. So that involved bringing all our stakeholders from digital, our trading managers, our propositions leads all together to kind of really focus on, right, what are the key how might we's, and what do we want to test within this week to get out there to the customers.
Yes, wow. So it sounds like a lot of work went into that, but it
was a lot of workshops.
It was worth it. I think it's so important to take a breath and stop and kind of go, hang on, right, what have we done so far? How are we going to move that forward and make it really useful? I mean, I guess, was that you kind of, had you proved experimentation and the value at that point, or do you think that kind of big push was the proof that you needed to kind of jump forward?
I think in kind of all the optimization we done, we kind of did smaller ones like Let's Trial bundles, etc. But that was kind of, we were seeing it wasn't moving the dial enough. So we're like, right, okay, we need to push something. And our kind of my line manager was like, do you know what, ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So just go out there and go wild with those optimizations. And that's really when you start to kind of learn bolder insights from our customers as well. So it's really interesting. And to give you kind of context in some of the testing we did, we learned that, okay, so BTTV and broadband packages is kind of overwhelming for the customer. There's so much choice within that. So we really kind of stripped back the product to kind of just provide a recommendation for the customer, be like, this is the product we think is best for you, in a conversational commerce approach. So that really shifted the dial, and we've seen conversion kind of shoot through the roof with that.
That's really interesting, yeah. And so you in the middle, do you run multiple tests at different times, or you kind of, how does it work? I know you've got a whole team in-house. You don't use any external resource, do you? So your team are, I'm guessing, designers and developers, and you've kind of got that all in-house. Do they work across different tests at different times, or are they focused in on one or two?
Because of the way kind of my squad was set up, we kind of had sole focus on one journey, so that broadband acquisition, well, BTTV and broadband acquisition journey. So when we're doing testing, we kind of focus on one to make sure there's no kind of other factors coming into play with that test. Yeah. So we'd be like, okay, this is the one journey we're testing, and there's no other factors. This is what we know is a true result and the kind of true insight from this test.
Yeah, makes sense. Just one other question, really, I think, and it was just about the challenges you faced. I mean, you've touched on a few as you've been chatting, but I think what we've been trying to do today was kind of try and help people kind of move forward and move through those stages. But what has been challenging, and sort of how have you overcome any challenges?
Yeah, so I think I touched on a few of them. So departments still work in silos. So as we discussed, you can't get that proper end-to-end view. Product setup, where I work is set up by user journeys. So it's set up by learn, buy, get, use, pay and support. But we don't have that kind of before aspect and after aspect, which is obviously a pain point for us. Other issues comes as no surprise, but as a telco, we've got a lot of legacy technology within there, so that really slows us down in terms of optimizations. But there's a real focus on that now about, okay, how can we get our platform off legacy and onto a new technology stack? So hopefully that would then empower all optimizations going forward. Also, as well as kind of being a key kind of trading team, the main priority is, as though we always want to do optimizations, if something comes around like, oh, we need to get a new offer out there, that would always take priority, so in response to the market and competitors. So that is kind of always another key problem for us, because we want to optimize, but from the business priority, we want to make money, right? So that always kind of makes the priority cut. Other things as well is working with content partners. So BTTV, there's loads of content partners, so you've got loads of long sign-offs, and we're trying to work agile, which comes to a bit of pain for us, because if we want to do a test, we need to get sign-off from, say, Netflix, from Now TV, etc., which can be a pain point. Also, it kind of slows us down when we want to be learning fast or failing fast.
Yeah,
those are key things for us.
Must be frustrating sometimes. Certainly when you said about the sort of legacy systems and the storefront versus those is really difficult, and you just want to optimize something, but you just can't do it yet. So no, that is something we've picked up on as well. Oh no, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. We have got one question come through from somebody. So Casey has asked, when running one test at a time, how long do you tend to run the tests for? So thinking about when you reach significance and maximize learning.
So we usually run a test for around 2 weeks, but it really does depend on that significance aspect. So if we're getting enough traffic through, if we're seeing that conversion kind of increase or decrease to appropriate level. So it's kind of, we have analytics teams there to support us, so we set up dashboards and we can monitor as we go, and as soon as it reaches significance, we're like, okay, we can stop the test, see the results, what's the insights, and then kind of look at what's next.
Yeah, so the analytics team, a central team? Or... Yeah,
so it's a central team, so they focus, they are set in digital, but they support multiple squads. So my analysts will support everything TV and sports. That's kind of upgrade, acquisition, So their kind of focus is TV and sports. They know that product inside out.
Right, right. And the different squads you mentioned. So your squad is BTTV, or is it Optimisation? Yeah. So
BTTV. Yeah.
So different squads are different products, or
it's all journey focused. Then journey focused, and then deeper lens would be product focused.
All right, well, I think we're going to probably have to get you back to do a presentation to explain it a bit more detail so we can see the visuals. We've got another question. So have you done any app testing? And if so, how did you get on with it?
So in terms of acquisition on bt.com, we don't have app testing. That's something that's more looked at on the EE side and also on the support side, so the service side of things. So I have not had any experience within that yet, but I know it's looked at across other squads and alliances.
Okay, well, those are all the questions. I don't think there's any more. I don't know if Katie and Alex had any burning questions to jump in there before we finish off. If not, then I will just share my screen just so we can see some contact details. Thank you so much, Lois, for joining us. It's been brilliant to get that insight from you. I'm just going to finish off this morning with my email. If anybody wants to get in touch, our email address and LinkedIn profile. We will be running more webinars, so keep an eye out for those, and I will let everybody have 2 minutes back of their time and finish a couple of minutes early. So thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.